Okay, we want to carry on with the preaching of the letter to James, and we are moving into the next section today. So first we review what was taught last week. I want to tell you that the first 12 verses of James is actually based on right about the same kind of a theme. So the last lesson we had was, again, it was continuing with the theme of trials and suffering. This is important to repeat because many people take the few verses out of context and they preach a completely different sermon, leading to a lot of the issues that we have today. And basically, last lesson was about how in the midst of your trials and tribulation, there is a need to seek for wisdom to know what to do. And so the passage relates to what it means to seek for wisdom. And from there, we see that James tells us that when we are in difficulty, when we are in trials, especially when the trials and difficulties are related to what we do for God, particularly for that purpose, then when you seek God, James says that God will be generous to us and he will surely give us the wisdom that we need. And from there, we actually latch on to the topic of wisdom. And I spoke about how we are in a world where wisdom is a free-falling kind of a situation. There are many, many issues right now today that we can't find true wisdom anywhere in the world. And I sort of analyzed for you some of the key reasons. After the preaching, I continue to think about such issues and discuss with different people. And indeed, a lot of people recognize the internet and the information explosion as one of the key reasons why the world is in a mess today. And it will get worse. So we are in a mess that will only get messier. And every single morning as I read the newspaper, my mind is just overwhelmed and swarming with all sorts of thoughts because you look at the mess in the world and the difficulty in trying to solve it. Ever since I was young till now, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. It get worse. In fact, biblically speaking, the Bible has a pessimistic view of the future of humanity, meaning it will not get better. It will get worse until our Lord Jesus Christ will come again. And so we should be very thankful for this country because this is a very unusual kind of a situation in the face of the world. And how long will it last? We really do not know. But we know that God lasts forever. And so that's the one thing we hold on to. But in the midst of all this mess, we know that true wisdom can only be found in God because, as the Bible tells us, God not only is wise, God is wisdom. And we do see that in several places, like in the Bible, in Proverbs, and certainly in the example of King Solomon. And so I did share with you also from 1 Kings chapter 3, how Solomon sought wisdom, and God was pleased because it is an indication that he was seeking God himself. And of all the things that he could ask for, when God gave him the opportunity, he sought for wisdom. And of course, Proverbs declare that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And therefore, of all the voices in the world and of all the wisdoms of the world, you need to understand that true wisdom and ultimate wisdom comes from God because God is wisdom. And the seeker of the faith, James says, a seeker of true wisdom must exercise faith. James says that when you seek God for wisdom, you must believe in God and not waver and not wonder whether you have believed in the right thing. And so we did spend some time on what does that really mean when you say you have faith in God. It is not to have faith in the self or the faith in faith. And while Solomon has the wisdom early to seek for wisdom, his wisdom did not last very long because he had hate wisdom. He did not have wisdom of the heart and he did not seek God finally. And then he went after all the women of the world, 1,000 of them altogether. And after the preaching in the evening, I discussed this with Dr. Stephen Tong right before we had expository preaching. And then at night when he did his preaching, he brought that out as an example and talked about how Solomon's case was started with wisdom, seeking wisdom, because for him to ask for wisdom is wise. And then wisdom, fooling around with wisdom, because later on in his life, he was so full of himself that he thought he's so wise that he don't need God anymore. And finally, his own fallen wisdom destroyed the first wisdom. And that was the way Dr. Tong positioned it. Indeed, that's the case. So it's not just knowing that God is true wisdom. It is also having the faith to turn your heart towards God. And also it's not about faith in faith, where you say that if I believe strong enough, then I'll get whatever I want, which is the charismatic understanding of what faith is all about. But ultimately, it is faith in God, in everything about God, the attributes of God, the wonders of God, the faithfulness of God, everything relating to God and not the processes alone. And that's what James really meant. And I ended the sermon by talking about how we need to trust in the Lord with all our heart, and that's taken from Proverbs also, and not lean onto our own understanding. And so in so doing, then we know that the one that we have trusted in is completely faithful to whatever it is that he has promised in his word. And so the phrase that I always use is a God who cannot possibly make any mistakes. And so that's something that I want to have encouraged you to always remember. Today we move on to the next segment, which is again related to the very first verse about how we are to be in trials and tribulation and the things that must happen or will happen in the course of that. So with that in mind, let us come to God in a word of prayer. Let us pray. We thank you, Lord, for leading all of us here this morning. We do want to ask that you keep our hearts calm and open towards you as we turn our focus upon Jesus Christ. There may be many things and many voices that disturbs us before we come this morning. We do ask for your grace that we may be cleared in our mind as we focus on you, so that our heart will be prepared like good soil, that the seed of your word will enter into our heart and transform us. Have special mercy on your unworthy servant. May the words of his mouth and the meditation in all our hearts and mind be deemed acceptable in your sight. For you are our God and our Redeemer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So as I mentioned earlier, this particular segment actually closes the first thought of the opening verses of James. The background information is that it's a continuation of verse 2. Remember when we first started preaching on James, verse 2 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of different kind." And then James went on actually to explain what does it mean when you meet trials of different kind. And the explanation actually only ends at verse 12. So everything that he said, the first one, is that faith produces steadfastness, that you may be perfect and complete, in verse 4. So we preach upon that. So through your trials, through your difficulties in life, especially when it is linked with God, and it is God-based or God-caused, then it will produce steadfastness. I am happy that after the preaching, the brother approached me and shared with me a lot more about the sermon, how the sermon impacted him, and how it rings so true for him, because in his life, he paid a very serious price for being a Christian. A lot of opposition from family, a lot of difficulty, a lot of insult and humiliation and what have you. And he said that the Bible was indeed true, that through all these ups and downs in his life, and he's very clear that it is because he wanted to proclaim Jesus Christ as his Lord, it produced a steadfastness and a stick-to-itness in his life with regard to his faith. And then from there, there's all kinds of joy. And then this James went on to talk about what we preached about last week, and that's the area of needing and seeking true wisdom in the midst of trials and suffering. So do not take the verses out of context and say that, okay, the verse applies to anything. You want a Mercedes-Benz, do not doubt in your heart. That's what you will get. It's not. The verse actually refers to when you are going through trials and suffering, especially when it is based on the cause of God. And so today we go on to the last portion of what will happen when you are facing trials and suffering. In verse 9, the Apostle James says, "Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation." And then, of course, subsequently, then he says, "the rich in his humiliation." And so one of the things that James is trying to tell us is that when you go through trials and suffering, there is a very unusual impact. And this impact is in the area of equalizer, an equalizing kind of a function of trials and suffering. That it sort of equates those who are materialistically poor with those who are materialistically rich. So that means that when you are poor, you get exalted through trials and suffering. But when you are rich, you get humiliated and sort of lowered to the same level as the other person who is poor. And this is a very important thing for us to understand, that there is a positive aspects of trial and suffering above just having faith and being steadfast and gaining wisdom. It is also a very true kind of equalizer. Now, in our life, we don't quite see this very much because, especially for those of us who live in a city, in a urban kind of setting, because our culture generally, especially as Chinese, still tell you that it's better to be rich than to be poor. That it's better to get more zeros in your bank account than to have no zeros in your bank account, or to have zero zeros in your bank account. It's better to be safe than to be flying without a safety net. And so it's very hard for us to actually observe a situation where James says the lowly brother is able to boast himself in his exaltation. And so I find it difficult to find an illustration, but I do have one. Some of you have heard this illustration before, and so I would ask that you bear with me as I repeat this illustration because it's a very important and very personal one to me, where I witness for myself how a person who is materialistically poor can be elevated, as James says in verse 9. Many years ago, I went to China in Henan to look for ministry opportunity for Habitat for Humanity because, China is so big and we had some contacts in Henan, and there are just so many issues of poverty relating to China. Actually, you can go to any place. It just so happened that we have some contacts in Henan, and so we went there. And our contacts brought me to two university professors in the city of Nanyang in Henan. And it was a very strange time to meet with these two professors because they were very nice people. They are professors in a communist country. Back then, they are still pretty close up. And they live in a land where people are very suspicious of charitable work in China. It's not like in Singapore when you have a Nepal earthquake and what have you, people will send money and they will call us up in Habitat and say, I'm going to give money, this and that. In China, it doesn't happen that way because everybody is very skeptical, even of the Chinese Red Cross, because there are fraud, there's all these issues happening. And so these two professors, when I discuss with them about charitable work, they don't quite understand. They don't quite believe that it is possible for you to go and come and help the poor and to gather volunteers to build a house and all that. They just don't get it. But the two of them were very kind people. On their own, they set up scholarships for the poor students from the mountain region so that if you are from a primary school far away in some remote place in China and you are top in the school, then you get to be sponsored to travel from your village to Nanyang, the city, and to have like a 1 day or 2 day tour, which for some of these kids from the remote area is like a luxury of their lifetime. They will never ever leave their village without that kind of sponsorship. And so I was very impressed because these two professors, coming from a background that is so skeptical, would do things like that. So already I felt quite good with them. But the two person told me that, hey, Mr. Yong, I want to let you meet someone today, a very important person. During lunchtime, we want to bring to your attention someone which we think that you can work with. And so I was very happy and I was looking forward to meeting somebody because if the two professors are such nice people, surely they will bring me someone who is better or more capable. Lo and behold, during the dinner, that guy came. He was a short guy, well, not so short, dark skin kind of a person. And he sat beside me. His name is Yao Jingqi, the person on the far right. And he, in the Chinese term, he's called a nongming, which is a farming kind of person. Nong and nongfu, for those of you who still remember your Chinese. Nongming, they are considered the lowest in the Chinese strata of the society, the people who farm the land. And so on my left are the two professors, and we can talk about geography, we can talk about politics, we talk about society, and on my right is this very quiet, very dark guy who sat quietly and didn't say a word. And a few words he uttered, I don't know what he was talking about because his accent was very, very strong, the local accent. And not only that, to add insult to injury, he suddenly took out this Changshou cigarette, 长寿 means longevity, cigarette, and he said, like, 抽烟, have a cigarette. And I was like, hey, I travel all the way to Henan to deal with big deal things, I'm not here to listen to some 农民 guy who of all things, all he know how to do is take out of all the branding a 长寿 longevity cigarette, and he want to offer it to me and shorten my life. It's 长寿. And so seriously, in my heart, I said, my God, these two professors, what in the world are they thinking about? I don't have too much time to waste with all these 农民 people, right? I mean, he didn't say a word, okay? But the professor sort of sensed it, So one of them tell me that 杨先生你忍耐一点啊，等一下 be patient, it's okay, wait for a while. 等一下我们去他家 we go to his house. And was like, okay, whatever, so since you are the host, I will go to his house. And we traveled to his village after the particular meal. And this is the picture taken outside his home. And the first thing I noticed is that you're too far away to see. There are couplets on top of the frame that indicated that they are Christians. The one on top says 基督家庭, that means Christian family. And the couplets are poems, Chinese poems that sort of complement each other. I remember it's 富满乾坤大地乐，基督家庭福悲义, something along that kind of line. That means quite clearly once you look at a couplet, you know that this family is a Christian family. And so the first thing you realize that this is a Christian couple. So this is Yao Jingqi, middle the wife, and this one is the brother. And the rest of the house look like this. Or outside the house, it looks like this. And all of a sudden, I realized that this is no extraordinary person. Because Yao was a person who specializes in one thing, and that is to love old people. Yao Jingqi is a 农民 who spent his entire fortune and his, by now about 20 years of his life, picking up abandoned old people everywhere he sees. And he has given everything in his life. He has no organizational support, no nothing. He just go out and pick up these old people and bring them to a compound, which is an abandoned primary school, and he just take care of them. He just feed them, he just bathe them, he just clean them and all that. And when I visited, there was a blind old woman there, one guy who was completely paralyzed on the bed, one other old man who is also blind, and a whole mishmash of people who are hanging around in that particular region. And so he's in the middle, and these are some of the elderly folks there. And his intention is very simple. The other people are made in the image and likeness of God. And so I need to take care of them. I just need to care for them. And he had no organization, no nothing, no special training, no church group or whatever supporting him. He just went ahead and do this. And so when he runs out of money, he will go and borrow, he would go and try to plant some maize and whatever it is. Whatever they have, they share. Whatever is enough, not enough, they try to make do. And so the living condition was very bad. And the houses was terrible. And I went into one of the houses which housed this particular old lady, and I came out and I wept and I cried because I cannot imagine that people would live like that and that he would do that. And when I visited, he had like 15 people with him. And through the years, he has taken care of about 50, by now ought to be 60 over elderly. And they keep dying, right? So he would then do the funeral for them and to do the ashes, the cremation, and keep the ashes in that funny little abandoned primary school of theirs. And it was the most amazing experience for me because, I'm organizationally trained. I go for understanding of poverty fighting and the steps and procedures that will happen. And so here you have this guy, a Christian guy, who just give of his life to do this. And he is in serious financial trouble because he, in China they call him 傻子, crazy, you're crazy, you spend all your life doing this, and his wife is angry with him, his kids don't get to marry well because dad has no money, and it's just incredible. Till today, it still boggles my mind that God would raise a person like that. But when I compare myself with him, there are videos on the internet for him, and you watch him speak. He's a typical 农民 who speak like Mao Zedong when he declared independence of China. It's like, wow, he's so unsophisticated. I'm a sophisticated speaker, right? I think. and methods, it's just so crude method. He just, when you come in, I just clean you up and just clean up your mess, your urine, your feces or whatever it is. Old people, we got 粥, we 吃粥, we got 饭, we 吃饭, whatever it is, we just, whole gang of us just follow along. It's such a crude way of doing things, isn't it? Everything theology, I can guarantee you that he doesn't know much theology. I mean, when I speak to him, he doesn't seem to say anything. Reform, do you know Westminster? He doesn't know any of these things, right? But I tell you, when I am with him, I keep quiet. You know what I mean? You keep quiet because you are with a spiritual giant here. So he may be materialistically poor compared to any one of us seated here. But I tell you that he is exalted in the eyes of God because he's spiritually rich in a way that even I cannot imagine. And I think that even most pastors that I met in my lifetime cannot imagine, because God has chosen to raise a person who truly has given his life to help other people. And today I'm still continuing. When I came back, I thought that I would want to raise funds to help him build a proper home, and there are many people who came alongside me to want to help him. But he is in a difficult position because he's in China. And as I said earlier, China doesn't have a correct understanding of charity. And so he never got a permit to build anything. And so that became an issue. We couldn't transfer funds properly to him. And I'm still trying to contact him to see whether he can be supported to continue the work that God has given to him in his life. So this is a classic example of a lowly brother who can indeed boast in his exaltation. That through the difficulties that he has to encounter because he has chosen to be a follower of Jesus Christ and to do the work that God has asked him to do in a very simple manner, continue to suffer materialistically through walking this pathway in life. But he is exalted by our Lord, certainly. I have no doubt whatsoever that God has exalted him. And James go on then to talk about the equalizer for the other part that's easier for us to understand. And the rich in his humiliation, because like a flower of the grass he will pass away. For the sun rises with its scorching heat and withers the grass. Its flowers falls and the beauty perishes. And also will the rich man fade away in the midst of his pursuit. Now this is much easier for us to understand because we are all rich, right? So, but I want to tell you that in verse 10, and the rich refers to a rich brother, not just any ordinary rich guy out there, but a rich brother in Christ, because James was focusing on the group of people who are suffering. So as I mentioned many times to you, the Christian faith is not an ascetic faith, or at least the Reformed faith is not an ascetic faith. Meaning we do not tell you to go sell everything and be poor and be like Yao Jingqi and all that. No, we don't, because as the Westminster proclaimed to us, we glorify God and we enjoy him forever. And so part of the enjoyment of God includes the idea that whatever we honestly make, God allow us to honestly enjoy. But of course the Bible warns again the temptation of wealth, very much so. And this particular idea about the grass withering is taken really from Isaiah chapter 40, verse 6 to 7. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 6, a voice says, cry, and I said, what shall I cry? Of flesh is grass, and all its beauty like the flowers of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when the breath of the Lord blows on it. Surely the people are like grass. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of the God will stand forevermore. So this is from the prophet Isaiah, and in the Bible it's quoted various times. Like in your second responsive reading, the second passage from 1 Peter, it quotes exactly the same verse. This is because Isaiah and the early Israelites live in a land of wilderness, very desert-like. So those of you who watch National Geographic Channel would probably know this. Now in a desert, oftentimes when a rain comes, suddenly the grass will sprout out and the flowers will bloom very quickly. But the very next day when the sun comes out, the scorching sun comes, the grass will wither and the flower will fade quite immediately. And so the Israelites have a very imprinted understanding of the brevity of life and the brevity of things. I think closer to our region would be the Japanese with sakura. Anybody been to sakura, whatever? Seen a sakura tree before? Come on, I don't believe you. Never? Not the fake one, the real ones. Yeah. You go to, do you know why the Japanese like the sakura flower other than the fact that it's so spectacular? One of the reasons is the brevity of the sakura tree. When it blooms for only about a week or so. And then about that's it, And so within that week itself, the Japanese, they go there, they have picnic, they dance, they get drunk or under the sakura tree, and I don't know what else they do. Because the Japanese appreciate the fact that the sakura tree demonstrates the brevity of life, how short it all is. And you have spectacularly bloom yourself, and then after that you die. And so it goes very much in line with the Japanese kind of a culture. So it's pretty similar right here. Isaiah is reminding all of us about the brevity of life. That no matter who you are, life is short and it passes away. No matter how much things you have, it passes away. But, it's something that's very difficult for us to grab hold of. Very difficult for us to understand. Very difficult for us to even believe. Because we live in a world that tells us otherwise. I dare say that out of 1,000 things in the world, maybe 995 things will tell us that this is nonsense. You should grab hold to your wealth. You should grab hold to all the wonderful things in life, because the one who dies with the most toys will win. And it is so difficult that even for me, I find that to be a pressurizing point when I deal with my peers and the people of my age group. In the WhatsApp group that I'm in, I have all my friends. I bet some of you will watch the YouTube and then curse me for bringing up this example. Recently, all these scout friends of mine are discussing about life, And when that happens, once in a while they put out there, let's ask TM, Teck Meng, what to do. What does Teck Meng think about all this? Because they know I'm a pastor and a charity worker. And so they discussed and they were debating. And then one of them said, after all, life is a lot more than GCB. And they are scouts. And it's a WhatsApp. And when they are in WhatsApp, they behave like secondary 2 kids. Okay, me too lah. And so they crack dirty jokes and all that. And I asked myself, GCB, is this some kind of vulgarity thing? What does that actually mean? And then they said, yeah, it's right. Life is a lot more than GCB. La. And so I asked, hey, what is this? What is this GCB thing? And they say, don't talk nonsense. I know you know. I said, no, I honestly don't know what you mean. Anybody know here? What does GCB means? Good class bungalow. Thank you, Hadi. Now we know you know. Good class bungalow, Life is more than good class bungalow. I'm very happy some of you turn around and say, what does that mean? Good class bungalow. And it tells me that my peers are at the level where they are discussing good class bungalow. So it's not enough that you stay in a landed property, right? Or even a bungalow. You want to ask yourself, good class bungalow. And I wrote in and said, oh, sorry, wrong room, different league, different league, good class bungalow. And that seems to be how life is like, right? You have a 3-room flat, not good enough, you go for 4-room, 4-room not good enough, go for 5, 5 not good enough, you go for condo, condo not good enough, terrace house, terrace not good enough, semi-D, semi-D not good enough, what else? Bungalow, bungalow not good enough, good class bungalow. And I tell you, above good class bungalow, there's one more. Above that, Sentosa Cove Bungalow. Okay, that's ultimate in Singapore already. And today's newspaper, dolphin swimming kind of a thing, maybe that's the next wave altogether. And that's the way we all are. It is extremely difficult for us to hit the call. But James says that if you are rich, about the only way you can be elevated is when you are humiliated by giving up or being pulled away from all these kind of things that traps you in life. It is so difficult that when I think about illustration, I wanted to think about illustration that parallel my Yao Jingqi illustration earlier for the rich. I find it difficult, in this region. Is there a good Christian guy in this region that can demonstrate that he is not caught by all these things? I cannot quite find one. The one person that I found is Chuck Finney, that I shared with some of you before. He is 84 years old this year. And this guy is the most unusual person, brought up by Roman Catholic parents, not very sure whether the things that he has done is really because of his Catholic faith or Christian faith. But he is likely one of the most generous person ever. This person is a person who wears a $15 watch, flies economy. Get this, he does not own a house or even a car. So what's so spectacular about Chuck Finney? Chuck Finney is a person who is a founder of the DFS store. When you go to the airport, you see all these DFS kind of a store. And the thing that is highly unusual about this guy is that he has given away US $7.5 billion for the past 30 over years. One person using his resources, his ability, through a foundation that he has started, has given away $7.5 billion for the past 30 over years. But the thing that is highly, highly unusual about this particular case is that nobody knew about this until the year 1997, because his foundation was sued by some disgruntled shareholders of DFS. And then it was exposed that he has been quietly giving away his wealth all throughout his life. And his aim was to give away 100% of his wealth by the time he died. And he is the person that inspired Bill Gates and Warren Buffett to set up all their whatever foundation that they have. The idea that I will give away everything when I am alive. And today, if I'm not mistaken, he still has $2 million left in his bank to give away. I'm about to write to him. We've got orphanage coming out, right? So, how, I think like the Yao Jingqi case, it's another case that boggles my mind. That you would give away everything in your life quietly. Doesn't own a house, doesn't own a car, wear a $15 watch, and live life like that quietly without anyone knowing until a lawsuit comes to force you to reveal the fact that you are the one who has been giving. In the past, when he gave, he make it a very strict condition for the charities that they are not to reveal to anyone that he is the one behind all these things. And so this is the most remarkable demonstration that someone is not beholden to his wealth. And it is so strange and so odd that I think that there are very, very few examples in the world. I certainly don't know any Asian examples. Well, I know a lot of Asians who are very generous and very kind and what have you, but none can hold a candle to a situation or a person like Chuck Finney. And perhaps none will ever be found like him, and he is still alive. So we look at the Bible. James described all these situations, where the poor will be exalted and the rich humiliated unless they are able to have a very low view of what they have. And this goes against the grain of our life or what we have been brought up to think. These are all upside down kind of descriptions of life. And surely if you read the Bible often enough, you will know that the Bible has many, many, many upside down descriptions of life. Our Lord Jesus Christ, for example, Matthew chapter 5 verse 43. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Sounds right. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. It seems most natural, right, for us to say we hate our enemies. Recently, our friend Amos E. got slapped. Not only slapped very hard. Oh, wow. I'm very curious to find out that 49-year-old guy, what he looks like. And it is very interesting. On the internet, people will start to say things like, oh, this is terrible. We shouldn't take violence into our own hands. Yeah. Our law minister Shamugan jump in and say, yeah, this is terrible. But I tell you, in the Chinese paper, Chinese foreign page, 哇，打得好啊，打得妙啊，为什么不打多一巴掌啊？左右I whack the father for the sake of the parents. Since the father don't do it, we do it. I thought one of them is most funny. The guy said, red shirt guy, Bojo, you never call me, Bojo. Because, of course, you hate your enemy, right? I mean, the guy, insult my founding father, okay, and then insult my faith and all that. We should slap him, Jesus Christ, upside down. I say to you, love your enemy, pray for those who persecute you. So those of you who want to post bail, still got time, 30,000 only. Love your enemy, go and bail him out. That's what Jesus said. And then another one, upside down description, Matthew chapter 16, verse 25. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. This particular verse is repeated in all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Whoever loves his life will lose it. This is very upside down. I love my life, of course, I will gain it. I lose my life, I lose it, right? But Jesus said no. If you save your life, you love your wife, you will lose it. But you lose your life for his sake, you will find it. And the Apostle Paul, many times, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 25, for the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but for those of us who are being saved, it is the power of God. And both these verses and all the other verses, many, many more verses, give us a very upside-down view of the world. It is a very strange reading sometimes to read the Bible because it tells us something that's completely different. So when we look at James telling us that the poor will be exalted and the rich will be humiliated, or humility will be brought to the rich when they go through trials and suffering, we are tempted very much to ask ourselves whether this sort of thinking processes is a self-consolation thing, which is what a lot of people think Christianity is, or the Bible is. It seems to be, right? You are like a cat looking at the mirror thinking that you are a lion, that you guys are poor, man, you guys are suffering, you guys are running all over the place being chased by the Roman soldiers, slaughtering you day and night. So you better have some kind of a self-consolation lah. Then you look at it and say, oh yeah, when I am weak, then am I strong. Then you say, the poor will be exalted, like a Yao Jing Qi thing. When he's very desperate, he look in the Bible and say, oh yeah, Bible say, I am exalted. After all, far away in Singapore, there's this pastor is talking about me, so I feel good. Is it just like that, a kind of a feel-good factor? Is it true that the Bible is just giving us some sort of a delusion, so that even though we are very weak, we think that we are strong? Even though we are going through lots of difficulty, we try to find some comfort. Why is it so upside down? I think I will borrow the illustration or the teaching by senior pastor just last week as an answer. Dr. Tong is preaching through the Psalms, especially focusing on Messianic Psalms, and that's the Psalms relating to our Lord Jesus Christ. And he was on Psalm 8, and he spent maybe 4 or 5 weeks already on Psalm 8. And let's go through Psalm 8 very quickly. Psalm 8, O Lord our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babies and infants you have established strength because of your foes, to steal the enemy and the avenger. So note the first thing. The psalmist, in this case David, said, you have set your glory above. The glory of God is above all things. And David says, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hand. You have put all things under his feet. So the first thing, the glory of God is set above all things, all heavens. And the second thing is, the psalmist says that God has put all things under the feet of men, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea. And so in the illustration that I've shown you before, O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. And that's how Psalm 8 ends. So in the illustration of where man is, the first thing that the psalmist is telling us, or indeed the whole of the Bible is telling us, is that God is above man. Above all things. His glory sets above all things. And the second thing the psalmist is telling us, and again indeed the whole of the Bible is telling us, is that we are above all things, because God has placed all things above us. And we have dominion over all things. This means that God, the correct order of life, is God is above us, to be honored, to be worshipped, and things are beneath us, for us to have dominion over. And so this is a very important thing for all Christians to understand. And so Dr. Tong spent a lot of time trying to explain that. It has tremendous implications in life, including the way we look at the world, the way we look at things. Some people, of course, have the wrong notion of it all. For example, we think that pets are very close to us. So we have, animals and they go to heaven. No. Some people even propose that Jesus Christ was a vegetarian, that he's very kind, so he won't eat the animals. So therefore, he was a vegetarian. That cannot be, he is a Jew. He definitely eat lamb. John 21 says he definitely ate fish. No doubt about it. But we don't. We look at the pets, we think that they are very important, they're very cute. My dog is very cute, so he will go to heaven. That's not how it works. We have dominion over all things. It doesn't mean that you are cruel to animals, but it does mean that you got to get the status correct. Many years ago, I was at Bishan Park. This woman was shouting, Johnny, don't run, Johnny, don't run. You run, mommy won't like you anymore. Mommy won't love you anymore. I turned around and saw Johnny as a dog, okay? So mommy chasing. Sorry, I don't know whether anyone of you call yourself mommy or daddy to your dog. Huh? But you must be very clear that the Bible draws a very distinctive line between the humankind and the animals. I don't know whether you will see your little Johnny in heaven. The Bible is not too entirely clear about it, but I seriously doubt so, just to let you know. So the Americans think that all dogs go to heaven. Rick Warren said that. That has no biblical basis, no matter how cute your little Johnny may look. So all things are to be subjected to us. And that's why the Westminster Confession of Faith say, we glorify God, and then what? You enjoy Him forever. And part of the enjoying Him is to enjoy the things that He has set for us, that we are to have dominion over the world. We enjoy a glass of red wine. We enjoy char siu, which I enjoy very much. This is what God has meant for us to do. But of course, the problem is that we often do it the upside down way, right? For most people, things are above us. We worship things. We queue up overnight for the latest Apple Watch. If you have tattoo, the Apple Watch cannot work, just to let you know. Those of you who have tattoo, covering up with your long sleeve. We queue up, we worship things, we worship people, we worship dogs and cats. I don't know, if you love them so much. We are obsessed with things. And God is beneath us. We use God. Right? You should worship God and you use things. But as Dr. Tong emphasized over and over again, we worship things and we use God. All the time. Everywhere we go, that's the way it is in life. But does that mean that the order is wrong? That actually things is above us and God beneath us? The answer must be no. Because, as I said often, God cannot possibly be wrong, If this is a setting of God, the Psalm 8 tell you that His glory is set above heaven and He has placed all things under the dominion of man. So the order is like this. It does not change. So how can it be that people will worship God, worship things, and use God? The only possibility, as Dr. Tong points out, is if you are upside down. If you are upside down, then of course things are above you, so to speak, and God is beneath your feet. My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, the order of the world has not changed. It has not. It has never changed. From the time God created the world, till now, till forevermore, God is always God. God is always above us. God's glory is always above all things. And all things were created for us, the most precious of His creation, made in His image and likeness. And so one of the takeaway lesson from here, again, I want to emphasize to you, you are not a piece of junk, okay? You are created above all things. So long as you are a human being, you have been created in God's image and likeness. You are above all things, and that's the way God meant for it to be. Subjected all things under your feet. If you live a life where you are controlled by material things, controlled by the material world, obsessed with getting that latest, greatest, whatever G-Smack thing out there, envious of all these socialites who do nothing but show off the range of Birkin bags she has. There's a program that's coming out on Channel 8. Every color she has one. Oh, If you do things like that, it's not that the order of the world has changed, no. You are the one who is upside down. You got it completely wrong. But it's very hard, isn't it? Very difficult for us to escape from all this. And the reason is because, as the Westminster Confession of Faith declare, of the fall of man, of sin and the punishment thereof, section 4, chapter 6. From this original corruption, the fall of man, whereby we are utterly indisposed, disabled, made opposite to all good, and wholly inclined to all evil, do proceed all actual transgression, the total depravity of man. A very important reform understanding. And the Westminster go on to say that this does not apply just to the sinners who are non-Christian. It applies also to people like us who are Christians. And so, as I often tell you, Christians are not sinless, they just sin less. And so even we have problem trying to escape from it. And the impact of the total depravity of man is something which I think is very, very underestimated today. As I speak, two persons are pounding each other and trying to whack their brains out somewhere in Las Vegas, is it? Am I right? And this whole Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather thing, in Singapore, thankfully, we're not that crazy. But the whole of the Philippines is in a standstill, completely. I was in a setting where I met Manny Pacquiao because he's ambassador of Habitat for Humanity Philippines. And that setting was a very serious setting. The vice president of the Philippines was there during the presidency of Arroyo. So you had the table and all that. Vice president, big deal, right? And the guests that night included Manny Pacquiao. I didn't quite know who this guy is. I just know that, okay, boxer and all that. Better don't go too close to him, he can kill you, kind of thing. All of a sudden, there was a huge commotion. All the waiters, waitresses, the restaurant manager, everything, they just dropped everything they have and rushed to the door. No? So the waitress was taking care of the vice president. And all of a sudden, and then they run to the door. I thought, what happened? What happened? Manny Pacquiao came. So when Manny Pacquiao came, you can be Lee Kuan Yew, I don't care. You run to him because he's like the biggest star ever. And the thing is so big that even Rick Warren, the very famous American evangelist, interviewed Manny Pacquiao and talked about his faith. And I watched one of the pre-fight thing, and Manny Pacquiao tell me whether, I'm a man of faith, I want to share with you my faith and about my Lord Jesus Christ, which is great. But I don't know why nobody point out that Manny Pacquiao will share Jesus Christ with him after he beat the brain out of him first. That Rick Warren is promoting a game where you have two human beings trying to kill each other. And they're not wearing any head protection, you know. And I've done boxing when I was in officer cadet school before. I tell you, it's a very scary thing. Even with the helmet thing. Because the guy is coming towards you and he want to whack your head. And your job is to make sure he don't get to whack your head and you can whack his head. So as a sport, it's, I suppose, very macho, quite interesting for men to get involved in. And I know women also do boxing these days. I know that women tend to want to pull hair instead of box. But, you know. But without a head protection, it's Roman gladiatorship, you know, without the swords and everything else. I see no justification for a sports like this. And yet, church leaders, pastors, everything jump in and you talk about your faith. Never mind, one of them can die if you get hit at the wrong side of the head. And people have died. You look at Muhammad Ali. He has Parkinson at a much earlier age because he got boxed onto the head so many crazy times. But the whole world is wrapped up in things like that because we are lost. We don't quite understand how all these things work. And it's a mixture of so many different values and confusions coming in. And Manny Pacquiao is a very wonderful man and very generous in helping the poor. But at the same time, there's some oddity in all these things in the sense that his house is so huge and his lifestyle is so strange. And so everything is mixed up together, you know what I mean, in a mess that is very, very difficult to have true wisdom as to how all these things work because we are all totally depraved. And so although Psalms 8 talk about how God has set himself in heaven and has subjected all things under the feet of man, it still doesn't work in life because we are totally depraved. And no matter how many times I will preach to you about the warnings of wealth and the trappings of wealth, I guess very few of you would be able to elevate yourself to the level of Chuck Finney, or even for myself as well. Because although we are not sinless, we do continue to sin. And although we sin less, we do continue to sin. And the impact will last with us all the way until Jesus Christ will come again. The author of Hebrews actually talked about this, the providence or the provision in Psalm 8. And so the author of Hebrews talked about how it is like. Hebrews chapter 2 verse 6, it has been testified somewhere, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you care for him? You made him for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, and putting everything in subjection under his feet. So the author of the book of Hebrew, who he is, we don't know, so we always use the word the author of the book of Hebrew, meditated upon the same psalm and said and reflected it here, that you have crowned this man with glory and honor and put everything in subjection under his feet. And he concluded in the next verse, now in putting everything in subjection at him, he left nothing outside his control. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to him. In other words, I can tell you the correct order of things, as the Bible says. God above us, God above man, man above all things. But as the author of Hebrews observed, no one has fulfilled that order today. We are not able to subject ourselves. Even Chuck Finney, I suppose, as close as he can have, giving away everything he has in life. And we look at the way we mess up the world, the way humanity mess up everything. We think of very creative ideas, no doubt, like this morning's newspaper about that dolphin thing. Some people want to build a villa on top of the sea outside Batam so that you can swim with dolphins. So if you have enough money, go and buy a villa there, swim with the dolphins. I was thinking to myself, how do you do that? You must find a place with dolphin, right? Then if you start constructing anything, the noise will chase away all the dolphin. They won't come back. No? So how do you guarantee? The answer is you build a giant net surrounding your villa, so that the dolphin actually are trapped inside. Then you can swim with dolphin because they cannot escape anyway. They are inside there. So therefore, it's like building your bungalow inside an aquarium. Then they cannot escape. Quite ingenious, right? Immediately, animal right people say, "Excuse me, the dolphin will die," because it's not freedom, and you are not going to take care of it. A whole mess of it. So mass of the world that we make is just incredible. Okay. So the author of Hebrews says, at present, we really do not see anything or everyone in subject to him. But the answer comes in the next verse. But we see him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, namely Jesus, crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. The world indeed is an upside down world. Not because God made him upside down, because we turn ourselves upside down to the order of the world. The Bible declares, but there is one person who fulfilled the correct order of the world, the only one who is right side up. Only one in the history of mankind. Past, present, future, evermore. Only one person fulfilled the correct order that God has meant for the world to be, and that is Jesus, crowned with glory and honor. At first, the author says we do not see everything in subjection to him, but we then see one person, Jesus Christ, who is crowned with glory and honor. And because of the suffering of death, not only that, the author of Hebrews says he gave us that grace. By the grace of God, he may taste death for everyone else. Therefore, when we look into the world, when we look at the writings of James that says the poor will be exalted and the rich humiliated by the wealth that they have to equalize their status before God. And you ask yourself, how can this work? How does this work? The world doesn't seem to work. We see Jesus Christ as the only person who has ever fulfilled man's original purpose as designed by God. And so, he is the only one who is right side up in the history of all of mankind. For us, therefore, to live our life, lest that we become upside down, you do need to look at everything through the eyes of Jesus Christ. May we live a life with this understanding. He is the true wisdom, the true exemplification of what God has meant life for us. The Bible says that he is invisible God made visible for us all. And so in our life, as we continue to journey through our life, may we be reminded always not to look at the world in our own upside down viewpoint, but to always look at the world through the one person who has fulfilled, the only one person who has fulfilled the correct order of things for God, our Lord Jesus Christ. And by so doing, live a life in a world that is in the correct design of God. And when you do that, you will find that all the blessings, all the abundance, all the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, fruit of the Holy Spirit that God has meant for us will come into your life. If you continue to live life in an upside-down manner, worshipping things and making use of God, then do not be surprised that your life will indeed turn up upside down, because that's not how God has meant our life to be. Last week when Dr. Tong was preaching, one of the things he said drove me to tears while I'm on the stage. But I will share one secret with you. When I'm crying on stage, I don't do this. Because if you do, the audience will so you just carry on as per normal. And they are very far away, they can't see you anyway. So you just let the tears stream down. Dr. Tong said that I gave my life to preach this gospel to you because I firmly believe in it. I firmly believe that this is the right direction. And I tell you that this is the right direction too. May we not take the word of God lightly. If we look at the world through the eyes of God, as Yao Jingqi did, in Henan, life can be very rough, can be very tough. But the joy of God will fill your heart so that you know that this is right and this is what I must do. May God grant you the wisdom to find the direction that He has meant for your life. Remember, He does not make junk. You are created for a purpose, so that all things will be subjected under your feet. Let us pray. We thank you, God, for your word this morning that continue to teach us about our life and the correct order of things. That when we say that the poor is exalted and the rich humiliated, it is because they have fulfilled the correct order of things. They may be poor materialistically, but people like them are rich spiritually, and in your sight, rich in reality as well, because we are the one who is upside down. Help us, O God, to understand this and to appreciate this. It's such a tough lesson because we are insecure people. We want to hold on to as many things as we possibly can, just in case. Help us, O God, to look at the world not through our upside down eyes, but help us to look at the world through your eyes, that we may see you for who you are through your word and be enlightened to the kind of life that we ought to live, that we may live life glorifying you and truly enjoying you forever. For you have meant for us to enjoy the wonders of life in the right manner, in the right processes. I pray for my people in this congregation and ask that you be real to them, that you illuminate their eyes as to the world. So as the old hymn says, when we turn our eyes upon Jesus, all the things of the world will grow strangely dim. Or the video anthem we heard earlier. This world is not our home. We are just a passing through. Our treasures are laid up somewhere above the blue. Help us to understand that, so that we won't feel at home in the fallen world anymore. Listen to our prayers. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.